Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Economic Review Forum 2012. It is a pleasure to be gathered here once again. The year 2012 has been marked by slightly sluggish economic growth, mainly due to dips in the external sectors such as manufacturing and trade. As such, the Singapore government has decided to review its international balance of trade. The example of the United States of America and the People's Republic of China will be drawn on today, to isolate some learning points on policy making. The current situation is of the US trade deficits with China. As we all know, a balance of trade refers to a net equilibrium between the total outflow and inflow of foreign exchange of a country with the rest of the world over a specific period of time. In other words, import expenditure is equal to export revenue. All countries aim to achieve overall balance of payments equilibrium. However, in the US-China situation, the US has been facing persistent trade deficit while China faces a trade surplus. Trade deficit or surplus is measured by the value of net exports produced by the country. The balance of payments disequilibrium in this situation is mainly due to the exchange rate policy. China pegs its currency to that of the US dollar. This means that an appreciation in the US dollar will result in a corresponding appreciation of the China yuan, and vice versa. When the US dollar depreciates, China will buy US dollar from its treasuries to support it. Thus, the value of the yuan will always lie within its targeted range. This is seen by the US as China's method of manipulating its currency. By having a fixed exchange rate, the value of the yuan is always relatively lower than the US dollar. The cost of production for China-made goods is always lower than that of US manufactured goods. China can then export cheaper goods to US markets. The export revenue of China increases, whereas the import expenditure of US decreases. This leads to the trade deficit of the US and the trade surplus of China. Now let's move on to discuss policies taken by the US to improve its balance of trade situation. This includes protectionist measures such as tariffs and export subsidies. However, these have not been working well and can have dual effects on the US economy. Imposing tariffs help to reduce imports of the US economy, as the price of imported goods now increase, leading to a decrease in demand. This aims to increase the balance of payments by decreasing the import expenditure. However, this will decrease the outflow of the US dollar to international currency markets. As a result of a decrease in supply of US dollar, the value of its currency will appreciate, decreasing the competitiveness of its goods internationally. As a result, its exports decrease and net export revenue still decreases, maintaining the trade deficit. Imposing export subsidies helps to stimulate demand for US manufactured goods abroad by decreasing its sales price. This aims to increase the balance of payments by increasing export expenditure. However, there will then be a greater demand for the US currency to buy US goods, causing the US dollar to appreciate. Cost of production of US goods will increase, and this counteracts the effects of export subsidies on the price of goods. The trade deficits will remain unchanged. Other factors to be taken into consideration regarding balance of trade also includes the demand elasticity of goods. Price elasticity of demand, PED, affects export revenue and import expenditure, which can be explained with respect to the US trade deficit. US exports comprise mainly of non-essentials, such as branded goods and airplane carriers. Demand for these goods is price elastic. When the price of these goods increase, there will be a more than proportionate fall in demand, thus lowering the total export revenue. Conversely, the US imports from China comprise of essentials. The demand for these goods are relatively price inelastic. As such, a decrease in the price of such goods will lead to a more than proportionate increase in its demand. The import expenditure will then increase, as US consumers are more willing to buy cheaper Chinese imports. Decrease in export revenue and increase in import expenditure causes the US trade deficit with China, as the value of its net exports is much lower. National income also affects the demand for China imports by the US. The demand for non-essentials produced by the US will decrease greatly during periods of international slow growth or economic recession. This is because the income elasticity of the good YED is more than 1. Hence, a decrease in income will lead to a more than proportionate fall in demand for the good abroad. This decreases export revenue of the US, leading to persistent trade deficits. The level of substitutability of imports also affects this demand. For a US manufactured good, which has many substitutes in the international market, if its price increases, the quantity demanded for the good will fall more than proportionately. This leads to higher import expenditure and thus a trade deficit. A method to reduce the impact of this problem is to do product differentiation, making imported goods less substitutable for local goods. Thus, the demand for goods will be less affected by a change in price. In conclusion, the example of the US trade deficits with China has given us much insight into the understanding of international balance of trade. We shall have a short recess before moving on to the next segment of this meeting, to discuss Singapore's balance of trade in the international arena.